This is occurring because people are frustrated with the appeal process in all health insurance. And so what the executives have to do at United Health, and frankly the whole industry, is appeal to reality and say, look, it's on us now. We understand you're unhappy. I mean, this murder, this assassination is horrific. There's nothing good to be said about that, and there's lots of problems with it. But at the end of the day, what it's leading to is the frustration of the users of healthcare. And everybody's affected by healthcare. They should be coming out now saying, look, we get it. We have families too. We're people. We have children. We care about what you think about, and we're going to automate this process and make it better or do whatever they have to. That when you appeal a case, it's not a delay situation. And if you have a valid claim, you get paid out. That's what insurance is supposed to do. But putting a fence around headquarters, hiring more security guards, that's all bad imagery, Wolf. It's all bad, and it's not the right answer. So if you're an executive, in interim management, UnitedHealthcare, or any other health company, you got to read the room, Wolf. You got to read the room and realize right now that the public is turning against you. They are your customers, and they don't like it. Now, this poor man lost his life, horrific. But if anything good is going to come of this, it's going to be policy change, because you've basically got people lighting up their torches, just like in the Frankenstein story, and going to the castle, and they're going to burn it down. And you got to hear that. So if you're an executive saying, get me more security guards, wrong answer. That's just wrong.
You just heard from Kevin O'Leary, who is a Shark Tank investor who had a surprisingly reasonable reaction to the celebratory response to Luigi Mangione's deed. That's what we'll call it. Now, when I saw that clip, it finally occurred to me for the first time ever, oh my God, these elites might actually be scared. And I say that because the response there from him felt like he was telling fellow elites, hey, play it cool, because if you overdo it with the security shit, the peasants are going to smell fear. At least, that was my read on it. But on one hand, I'm a little bit stunned to see a man worth $400 million strike the correct tone here. But on the other hand, you have to acknowledge that him being more self-aware doesn't make him an ally. And I think that it's important to say that, because you are going to see more savvy elites like him that are going to try to tap into the rage that we're all feeling and co-opt it. So that way we feel listened to, but their ultimate goal at the end of the day is to maintain the status quo. And I don't think that that's uncharitable, because in that interview, did you hear him call for single-payer healthcare? No, he essentially made the case for self-regulation when he knows that that's going to amount to nothing more than window dressing. So I want you all to get into the habit of being skeptical whenever a millionaire or a billionaire says something that's a little bit too good to be true, because their wealth has completely distorted their perception of reality. And while they might pay lip service to our concerns in order to placate us, never forget the fact that their interests are fundamentally at odds with ours, especially an investor like Kevin O'Leary. Now, another thing that O'Leary fails to understand is that healthcare is just the tip of the iceberg. Americans are also sick and tired of their landlords and their bosses and their senator and every other elite who is depriving them of the life they deserve. And O'Leary is part of the problem, because he was outraged by right to disconnect laws that stopped bosses from nagging employees after hours. And in response, O'Leary said that he would fire workers who put their phones on silent. So in his mind, he is entitled to your labor at all hours. The idea of rest or spending time with your family is offensive to people like him, because he doesn't see you as human. He sees you as a cog in the machine whose only purpose in life is to make people like him richer. And elites like him have been openly contemptuous of the working class for a very long time, and for the first time ever, they're finally realizing that their exploitation and subjugation of the rest of society has fostered this environment where working people are so fired up, they're ready for a straight-up revolution if things don't change. And make no mistake about it, elites can now sense that rage. Hence why they're shitting themselves. As CNN's Matt Egan explains, quote, corporations are scrambling to protect their senior executives as police warn of an elevated near-term threat against business leaders. Boards are reassessing security budgets, and CEOs are being told to delete their digital footprints. Phones are ringing off the hook at top-dollar security firms to keep the captains of industry safe. Corporate America is nervous. People people are on high alert, Keith Wojcicki, global head of intelligence at Kroll, told CNN in a phone interview. Companies want to elevate their security posture. Healthcare is the target now, but who's next? One executive at a major bank told CNN that the UnitedHealthcare CEO killing made plain the risk facing senior leaders in corporate America. Quote, "The big learning is that if you want to kill someone, you can kill them. It's really scary but true," said the executive, who spoke on the condition of anonymity. "It seems crazy that we're just figuring this out." It is crazy that you're now just figuring this out because corporations have been doing this to Americans for decades. You guys have been killing people, so yeah, you can just kill people, and you all are the main culprits who do this the most. Now, aside from additional security expenses that insurance companies in particular are paying for, they also remove the names of top executives from their websites because they think that a copycat might do to them what Luigi Mangione did to Brian Thompson. And their fear isn't necessarily unfounded because all of a sudden wanted posters with names of CEOs have been popping up across New York City. And here's some more details.
CEO wanted posters have been seen around the city as fears grow that copycats could target other corporate executives.
Well, Jim, there is a real sense of nervousness and even fear in C-suites really across the country. They're increasing the number of security personnel and the amount of technology in offices and even in the residences of executives. They're urging executives to delete their digital footprints, including stuff like the floor plans of their homes and any information that's out there about where their kids may go to school. And they're also enhancing mail screening.
And to be clear, the wanted posters and the fear of copycats, that's not the only thing that scares them. I think the popular sentiment, that is what really shakes them to the core, as well as the lessons that they see regular people taking from this. I mean, for years, we've been told that if we want to affect change, we've got to vote. Well, if we voted and things continued to get worse, we're told by politicians to just vote harder. But we keep voting and things keep getting worse, to the point where a third of the country doesn't even bother to show up because they don't expect their votes to make a difference. Now, after the shooting happened, people see how CEOs have been more terrified of a revolt from the peasants than they've ever been of any politician. People are making a mental note of that fact and implicitly associating violence with progress now, which should worry elites. For example, health insurance companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield reversed the evil decision that they made on the day of the assassination of Brian Thompson, by the way, to limit anesthesia coverage to customers, not because of some regulatory threat from politicians, but because the executives were worried of a different Luigi Mangione who would come for them next, or perhaps a Mario or Luigi Mangione's Waluigi. The point is, people are making a mental note of all of these things. They're realizing, oh, voting didn't affect change, but that did. So the failure of politicians and institutions has created a climate where Americans are celebrating vigilante violence because they're beginning to think it's the only way to affect change. Not a good predicament to be in if you're a country. And politicians, they can denounce it all they want, but their failures got us here. Right? If they actually represented Americans and not their corporate donors, things would never have gotten this bad. If we had Medicare for all, if Democrats did not sabotage the one candidate in 2016 and 2020 that was pushing for it, and we got Medicare for all, this wouldn't have happened in the first place. Brian Thompson would still be here. He'd be doing something else, but it wouldn't have happened. So if politicians actually listened to voters and gave them the change that they wanted and have been demanding for decades, we would not be where we are right now. So they have nobody to blame but themselves. And the shock from pundits and politicians over the response to this story is so fucking tone deaf to me because what did they expect? You can only distract people so long with celebrity gossip and video games and Netflix and bullshit like that. But at some point, things are going to get so bad that those distractions no longer keep people satisfied. And we're starting to reach that point. Think about it. Crooks on Wall Street crashed the economy and destroyed people's lives. And not a single one of them went to jail. On top of that, studies show that regular working class Americans have no impact whatsoever on policy outcomes. Only elites and wealthy interest groups do. We have reached the point where wealth concentration has surpassed Gilded Age levels. And as normal Americans struggle to get by and live paycheck to paycheck, they see elites like Kim Kardashian post about their lavish lifestyles while complaining about the peasants not wanting to work. There's only so much people can take before they become so enraged that they break out the pitchforks and want to burn the whole fucking system down. And we're reaching that point. So I know the politicians and pundits are trying to tame the angry masses right now by humanizing Brian Thompson and pointing out how he had a family too, but those old propagandistic tricks just aren't going to work anymore. And for the first time in a really long time, Americans actually feel empowered. And they are relishing in the fact that these CEOs are shitting themselves right now. And I've got to say, one of the few people who actually seems to legitimately get it is comedian Bill Burr, whose response to this story was actually really cathartic to see.
You know what's annoying me about this kid who killed this CEO is none of these news programs are talking about the incredible lack of empathy from the general public about this because of how these insurance companies treat people when they are at their most vulnerable, after we've all given them our money every fucking month, and now we finally need you, and all you do is deny us. And then these pussies and all of these things are taking the pictures of their CEOs off their websites. You know, I got to be honest with you, okay? I love that fucking CEOs are fucking afraid right now. You should be. By and large, you're all a bunch of selfish, greedy fucking pieces of shit, and a lot of you are mass murderers. You just don't pull the trigger. That's why it looks clean. That's why these people look, oh my God, oh, he was just, walking into a hotel. It's like, okay, but what was his job? What did he do? What was the results of it?
And that's exactly it. He gets what few other rich people actually understand. That this rage is wholly justifiable. You're not a bad person if you're sharing edgy jokes about the healthcare CEO and praising Luigi Mangione. This stems from a place of rage and abuse that you've experienced at the hands of these CEOs. And, the fact that so many people are speaking out and getting backlash, I think it demonstrates that there's this fundamental disconnect between wealthy people and working people, or I should say most wealthy people, right? And that's why there's this backlash. Look, this week I've done multiple videos about the backlash that other people have received in media, in particular, Ben Shapiro. He has a conservative audience, and they weren't buying the bullshit that he was selling. Pod Save America, they have a liberal audience, and they also received a lot of backlash because their tone was incredibly condescending and patronizing and just tone deaf. But guess what? It also happened on The View, who tried to scold people for celebrating the murder as well. So let's just watch a quick clip of that.
Murder's bad. Murder bad. Voting good, murder bad. Yeah, okay, let's get that straight. And it doesn't seem like a lot of people go bankrupt. 500,000 people go bankrupt in this country every year because of healthcare issues. It doesn't seem like an American idea that only rich people can afford to be sick. And yet it is an American idea.
Yeah, but some people assign if you don't feel a little bit of glee or that you're out of touch or you don't understand. And I'm sorry, but at the lowest low, this is not the way I was raised. My heart is not allow for this. Check in with your minister, check in with your parents, check in with someone. Because if you in any way feel this was the answer, you need to look at yourself.
The one takeaway we should have, well, the two, this is wrong, and now there are going to be kids who don't have a father on Christmas Day because the CEO was killed.
And just in case you were wondering, that video got more dislikes than likes because that commentary right there is so patronizing. They actually think that they have the moral high ground when they're effectively caping for a serial killer but don't even realize it. They're able to empathize with the rich CEO, but they can't fathom how sad it is that his victims also had families that can't be with their loved ones on Christmas because of that CEO. So they might be stunned by the lack of empathy for Brian Thompson, but make no mistake about it. They also lack empathy. It's just that they have no empathy for working class Americans who've been victimized by that CEO, right? Now, every time people like them or Pod Save America or Ben Shapiro clutch their pearls, they make it apparent that their wealth has blinded them to the reality of working class people. They don't see it the way that we see it. And if you're an elite who happens to stumble across this video, let me just show you this art here from Hollow that pretty much sums up our view. A health insurance CEO denying a claim that ultimately results in death is no different than an assassin who pulls the trigger. The paperwork and the suits and ties and this facade of legitimacy doesn't change the outcome. Somebody still died because of somebody else choosing to kill them. That CEO has more blood on his hands than the most notorious serial killers in history. So a lot of out-of-touch rich pricks are facing backlash right now, rightfully so, because they are effectively running cover for a serial killer and trying to get the peasants to feel sympathy for somebody who had no sympathy for them. And part of the problem is that those elites who feel sympathy for that guy, they were insulated from the harm that he'd caused them because they have a lot of money. So if their claim is denied, they can foot the bill out of pocket, whereas you would go bankrupt or die if you were in that situation. And people are taking notice of all the rich-splaining from privileged pricks who think that they're being empathetic, but in actuality, they're only empathetic to the CEO who's in the same class as them. So don't forget this moment. Remember this rage and stop listening to people who are complicit with your pain and suffering.